on corruption. Mark Stone, Sky News in Beijing.
Okay, let's talk about dog training collars. Apparently they give an electric shock to the animal and they're being debated this afternoon by MPs, joined from Bushey in Hertfordshire by vet Barry Cameron. And with us here in the studio is Jennifer Dobson, a pet behaviour consultant. To Barry, first of all, if we may. Hello to you, Barry. Who's the dog who's with you?
This is Trio. Oh. She's being very well behaved at the moment. So,
Fantastic. Talk to me about these collars. What do they do and how effective do you think they are?
Well, I mean, I'll start by saying this isn't my area of expertise. I mean, I'm purely looking at it really from a welfare perspective, but I do work with behaviourists quite a lot on a regular basis. And my understanding of how they work is that they can be adjusted to deliver an electric shock of varying intensity depending on what the operator sets it at, and it's remotely activated. So if the dog is doing something you don't want them to do, you activate the collar, and the theory is that it because it's a painful stimulus, the dog associates that with a negative action. So it thinks, oh well, if I do that and I get a painful stimulus, I'll stop that behaviour. So that's my understanding of how it works.
But does it cause any distress to the dog?
Well, I mean, I can't imagine it's particularly pleasant, but then again, I think that's the idea behind it. I think there's some research that I've come across that suggests that it can have more long-term effects, both sort of psychological and behavioural. As you're aware, it's quite a controversial topic, and I'm sure that I think it's Jennifer in the studio will put forward her views on it as well. But I think it's something that it's not clear-cut, and I think that potentially there are some damaging aspects to it.
Okay, Jennifer is with us, as you say, in the studio. Jennifer, on the face of it, it sounds to me like giving a dog an electric shock can only be a bad idea.
You should never use electric collars in isolation. It's one small part of an overall behavioural modification programme, or it should be. So you're not just looking at that, you're looking at rewarding the behaviour you want, you're looking at communication, you're looking at timing. It's not something that you use instead of reward training. It's what you use, in my opinion, as a last resort when you've tried all the other methods. And in a way, the problem is reward training can be too successful, because if what the dog wants to do has a greater self-reward factor than what you're offering it, obviously it's going to opt to do that behaviour, which in many cases can be dangerous either to the dog or to others. If you have a dog that chases cyclists, it can get caught up in the bike, it can bite the cyclist. So it's a question of looking for the safety and the welfare of everybody, including the dog.
But it's still giving a dog an electric shock.
Electric shocks are also used actually in pain relief in tendons.
Yeah, but this is not for pain relief, is it?
It's to get it often works on a startle response. You're not looking to cause the dog pain. That's why you need to find the level for the right dog. It is not a question that you buy a collar, you put it on the dog, you put it up to the highest level, you wait till the dog's doing the wrong thing, and then you press the button. That's absolutely how you don't use them. I'm not in favour of them being on sale to the general public, because I think they should only be used under the guidance and with the assessment of a knowledgeable, experienced professional.
Okay, so Barry Cameron up there in Bushey in Hertfordshire, if one of your patients came in with their dogs and said, you know, I'm thinking about one of these electrical shock collars, what would you say in response?
Well, I mean, as I said, I do work with behaviourists. None of the behaviourists that I work with advocate the use of them. I think there's different issues. One is that it's open to abuse. So if they are accessible or easily accessible, even if they are made less easily accessible, they can still fall into the wrong hands. So that's one thing that could become a problem. The other thing is that there are alternatives available, and I'm sure people who advocate the electric shock collar treatment would say, well, this is only for situations where that hasn't worked. But I think that that shouldn't, if there's a welfare issue, which potentially I think there is, I don't think that should stop us trying to pursue the correct way to do things. So you can get collars that will release a puff of air or release a puff of citronella, which is a sort of lemony fragrance. You can get things called pet correctors, which make a sound when you use them, all which are supposed to have a similar effect in terms of a negative a sound or an action that the dog associate with a negative action. And the other thing that can be used, which is these buzzing collars, which will vibrate against the dog and give them a shock, but not an electric shock. They just it's something that feels strange for them, and that the hope is that that then makes them think about what they're doing.
Interestingly, Jennifer, lots of people have been tweeting about this afternoon. Roy Watson has tweeted me directly to say, hi Roy, he says, anyone who uses electronic collars should not be allowed to own or work with dogs. Would a parent shock a child? How would you reassure Roy that it's a good thing to do?
Well, I think if you're talking about dogs and children, you're talking about apples and oranges. Children, you can have a communication with them. Children don't run at 30 miles an hour. Children can't run for 20 miles non-stop.
But dogs do have the intelligence of a 2-year-old.
They don't have the communication ability of a 2-year-old.
But that's down to the human, is it not, rather than the dog?
You can only communicate with the dog at a level and in a way that the dog comprehends. You can't sit a dog down and say, don't chase the cyclist, because you might get run over by the bike, you might be subject to aggravated dangerous dogs section 3 offence, which would mean that you would then be put down.
They understand no and sit, don't they?
Understanding and complying are two different things, and a dog that will stop doing something and sit when it's calm and quiet is very, very different to a dog that will stop doing it when it's loose and when there's a great motivation in terms of the thrill of the chase to continue doing it. And of course there are welfare issues, and that's why I was saying I don't think they should be available to the general public, and I think they should only be used under the expert guidance of a professional. But you would only be using them in situations where there is already a welfare problem. For example, if you have a dog that disappears for 2 hours when it's out because it has no recall, it can be crossing main roads in that time. That can be fatal to the dog, it can be fatal to people.
But that's up to the owner, surely, to have trained that dog when they were a puppy.
That doesn't always work, because dogs go through developmental stages as people do. So you can have a very compliant, obliging puppy that you ask it to come. It's not that independent, it will come when you ask it. That same dog might get to be a teenager or might have discovered the fun of behaviour that is not in its own interests or in the interests of others, and then that doesn't work so well. It would be wonderful if you could train every dog with positive methods only.
And final thought from you, Barry Cameron, how would you react to that?
Well, I just had a little laugh to myself when Jennifer was saying about controlling children with electric collars and how it's different because you can reason with them. I don't have the same luck with my 2-year-old, unfortunately. He seems to be completely uncontrollable, and I can't make him see sense, but maybe that's my failing as a parent. I think that the bigger issue really is if we need to look at the evidence, I think, is the evidence that looks at whether shock collar treatment is effective or not is very patchy. So if we were working in reverse and we were bringing this in as a treatment, and it didn't exist, and we said, okay, let's bring in a treatment which involves electric shock, we'd have to prove its efficacy as a treatment before people would sanction the use of it, and I think that no one would be able to prove hands down that it's better than non-electric methods, and therefore it wouldn't be introduced. So we're not in that position; we're in the reverse position, and I think that that's why it's an important debate to have. But my personal view is that I don't advocate the use of them, and I think there's other ways to work around the problem.
Okay, that dog has been incredibly well behaved the whole time that you have been sitting there.
She's just got a normal collar on, I assure you.
There she is. It's great to talk to you, Barry Cameron, also Jennifer Dobson. Thank you both for joining us here on Sky News this afternoon.
Thanks.
Lots of you offering your views on whether or not dogs should be subject to electric shocks if they, in order to be able to learn appropriate responses. So we'll share some of them with you in a short time. Tweet me directly if you would like to. Still to come, latest business news. Pay claim, why a rise for the Royal Mail's chief executive is causing